So let's welcome Alan and thank him for this building.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Okay, first of all, can you hear me back there? Dean, can you hear me? Okay. That's someone I met, so I can talk to her. Okay, and I've met a couple of you, and I'm pleased to be with you here today. And thank you, Tyler, for that introduction. It was a little exaggerated, but it was brief. So thank you very, very much. I wanted to tell you one time. I was telling my son-in-law, Ryan Henderson's with us today. He's the consummate entrepreneur. He started a real estate brokerage business back when the economy crashed. It's good to do things sometimes when there's a headwind as opposed to a tailwind. You know, when business is great and exciting and there's a lot of inflation and speculation and you can think you're really smart. Well, he was smart because he started it when it was tough, and today his real estate brokerage firm has 1,000 agents working for him in multiple offices around the state. So Ryan, glad that you're here today with us. One night, we were sitting at a dinner at downtown Salt Lake in one of the fancy hotels, and I was given an award that night, and a lot of nice things were said about me, and it had to do with entrepreneurship. It was an award that a firm gave called the Entrepreneur of the Year. And for some reason they thought I should receive that. I came back down to the table and sat next to my wife after all the hoopla and the applause and all the nice fancy words, and she said, "I want you to know that all that they said to you tonight has nothing to do with why I love you. That those really aren't as important as the more fundamental basic principles of life." And so I share that with you. Something else about construction, she told me after we were married a number of years, she says, you know, I had a different image in my mind of what a contractor was when we got married. I thought that they were about 275 pounds with a great big belly and a cigar out of their mouth and a drill sergeant vocabulary. Some of you may picture that as what a contractor is. Someone said to me recently, just the other day, he says, you know how to tell when a contractor is lying? Their lips are moving. So I hope that's not any impression you feel here today, because we were fortunate to be able to take advantage of the opportunity to address some of the weaknesses in an industry that had a lot of opportunity for improvement. And from that we built this company. I'm not really very comfortable in a situation where people treat me like I'm special, because I'm not. And I remember that night I received that Entrepreneur of the Year award. The only comment I said over the mic to this big dinner of all these people was, you know, I'm up here representing the dozens and dozens of people who lost sleep at night, didn't know if they were going to make their next payroll, wondered if they were going to be able to get some more contracts and business for their business, and it didn't turn out very well for them, and they went out of business. And I didn't really work any harder or have much more to offer them than they did. I thank you for your recognition, but entrepreneurship is about being lucky. It's about working hard. It's about trying to be smart. Now, everybody thinks you're smart. I would like all the people in this room who feel like you're below average in your intelligence to raise your hand. Oh, no, nobody raised their hand. No, you aren't. Anyway, if you ask how many people think they're above average, of everybody that raises their hand, half of them are wrong. Because average is the mean. Average is the mean. Yes, you're all smart. You all have good common sense. We all make mistakes. Entrepreneurship is a vehicle to help create and resolve and take advantage of opportunities that other people don't even see. And yet, in the end, as I say, it's sort of a lot about luck. I had a wonderful career, and for some reason, and I'm a lot tech disadvantaged. I couldn't make my printer print the way I wanted, and so my font is smaller than I wanted it to be. So I have to, can I wear these glasses? Sorry. Okay. I said I had a wonderful career. I did, a wonderful career. And as Tyler said, Mr. Stillman in the introduction, I graduated in civil engineering from Brigham Young University in 1972, which is the Stone Age for most of you. It was just the other day for me. Those years have gone very, very fast. But in 72, when I joined my father's business, he had 6 employees. I had always wanted to work with my dad in construction. It's the only job I've ever had. And there were years I wondered if I was ever employable to anybody else. And I got through that, and I may talk about that later. But I want to say that in that wonderful career, we had some great days, we had some bad days, and we had some special experiences and opportunities, but through it all, developed some wonderful relationships, friendships with people that made the quality of life far greater than it would have been if it was just about the numbers and just about money. Our employees, colleagues became some of my closest friends. And we enjoyed doing things together socially, and I will tell you in a little bit later about what that led to. Construction is a career that rewards ambition, creativity, and a tolerance for risk. Now, I retired officially from Layton Construction in 2004, when my wife and I received a mission call to go back to Western New York and supervise a bunch, 150 of you people. And I have a younger brother, David, who's 14 years younger than me. And for 20 years of at the beginning of his career, he felt like he was in my shadow. Any person probably would. And I didn't really try and create that. It's just the way it was. But I tell you, in 2004, he was more excited that we were leaving than we were to be going. And he took over the presidency of Layton Construction Company and has done a remarkable job ever since. But I'll tell you something about us. Have you heard? I want somebody to finish this statement. If it's not broken, don't break it, right? Don't fix it.
Yes.
If it's not broken, don't change it. Well, I have a different answer for that. If it's not broken, break it. Now, why would I say that? Because sometimes we get into routines and rituals and ways of doing things, and we think it works. In fact, I came to the point, there was a time in the business 30 years ago that my father retired, and I was lonely and alone, but I had a wonderful mentor in our accountant, the CPA who we worked for, who did our books, did our audits, and I would go to him for counsel. And he was an older man, and one day when I was asking him about how to address something I wanted to do, and he said, "Alan, let me just tell you." He said, "I've got a bunch of construction companies as clients. You're the most successful of any one of them. Don't change anything." I changed accountants because we'd outgrown him. It was hard. It was really hard because he was one of those social relationships that I had, but I knew that we had grown past. I mean, I had payroll clerks that were making more than his accountant that did our audit. And we just had outgrown that business. So we broke it. We pushed aside the safe, the certain, the sure, and decided that that risk would reward if it was managed. Managing risk. And so I was attracted to construction projects that were hard to build. I remember when we built a Smith's Food King. Smith's still around? Do you know who Smith's are? They have Smith's grocery stores. Anyway, yeah, Kroger's own it. That's right. Anyway, we built a Smith's Food King in 1978, and that's an account we'd been trying to get because they had a lot of construction to be built. But I finished building the grocery store, and I thought, man, that was so boring. It was 4 walls and an acoustic ceiling. That was all it was. A parking lot. We only built a couple more grocery stores the rest of my career because it wasn't anything exciting or special. There wasn't any opportunity to manage the risk and recognize the reward. And so we sought out projects that were hard and difficult, that if properly managed would be successful. We remodeled Byu Stadium, 82, it's a long time ago, in 7 months. We completely built a new stadium in Provo in 7 months. Because we started after the last game and we had to be ready for the first game next season. We did the same thing at Rice-Eccles Stadium in 97 when we rebuilt Rice-Eccles Stadium between 2 football seasons. And it took a lot of organization, it took a lot of planning, a lot of risk management, and the reward was significant. And I will tell you, we made a lot more money at the U than we did at the Y. But it's okay. Okay. We had an intense drive to learn what are called best practices. And there's books about best practices. And there are speakers who make a lot of money going around talking about best practices. Well, a lot of what is represented by some people as the best practice is really not. It's just the best they know. And I remember as I joined my dad and I was young and ambitious and enthusiastic and totally loyal to my father, I thought we were the best builder in the Salt Lake area. We did the best quality work. We had the best relationships, and I learned that we could be better. There were people better than we were. And as my horizons grew, I recognized that, and we'll talk about that more, about learning from people outside. Managing risk is learning how to take information, to predict performance, to anticipate problems and solve them before instead of after. I remember once coming back from a meeting on a project that had some problems on it, and I thought, this is kind of like being in the fire department, because you just show up when something's already on fire. We need to plan ahead. This is before the word proactive had been invented, by the way. We need to be ahead of what's happening so that the problems don't happen in the first place. And then people started talking about being proactive. I thought, yeah, that's a good word. It says what it needs. I don't think it's a great word, but you got the message. Anyway, okay. One of the lessons I learned early in our business has to do with customers. Don't count on being remembered. We had just finished a major project at the Salt Lake Airport, and the airport authority, the airport engineers were very, very complimentary. We'd come in on the prescribed schedule. And we earned a bonus because of that, and we thought we loved them. It was the 80s, the economy was really, really lousy, and There wasn't much work around, and then McDonnell Douglas announced that they were going to open a fabrication and assembly plant in Salt Lake, and they were going to build it on airport property, and the airport was going to build the building for them and lease it to them. And I kept waiting to get a phone call about being invited to propose a bid on this McDonnell Douglas project, and the call never came. And then I found out that it was underway and we were not invited. And I was hurt and probably pouted for a little while and had some immature things to say about the airport engineer. And I saw him a year or so later, and I said, you know, is there some reason why we were not invited to be on the McDonnell Douglas project? And he said, you were. And I said, no, I don't think we were. And he said, I made up the list. I'm going back to my office today and I'm going to find that list because you're on it. He called me, he said, I'm sorry. I am really sorry because there's no reason you were not on the list. Well, the reason was he forgot. He didn't think of us. And I made a decision then that I did not want to be forgotten. If you can imagine the economy or the business world is like a giant aquarium with lots of fish swimming around in them. And most construction companies from the outside look the same. They're all goldfish. There's lots of them in there. I wanted to be the green goldfish. I wanted people to think of us as totally different than anybody else. That's hard to do. Back in those days, in the 80s, there was virtually no branding of any kind in the construction industry. But I was in another city and I saw this giant semi-trailer on a construction site with the name in huge print. I came home, bought some semi-trailers, and we painted them up. We painted our pickup trucks with the name bright and bold on it. And one of my project managers came in one day and he was driving that truck. He said, my neighbors told me, he said, wow, what a truck. I thought you sold soft drinks with a truck like that. But we'd put those trailers out on project job sites. Now, everybody does that today, but nobody did it back in the 80s. I had a neighbor say to me, hey, I saw you moved all your equipment out onto this site. I said, yeah, we're gonna build there. And I said, what equipment did you see? He said, oh, your trucks. I said, didn't you see a van? He said, yeah, that great big van with your name on it. I said, do you know what's in that trailer? No. I said, air. It's a billboard. Oh. Anyway, my father came home from World War II, a totally disabled Army veteran. He was told by the Army doctors that, he said, I can see from your hand that you're married, but you and your wife should never have any children. You're very badly wounded. You're going to, if you'll be careful about your life, you'll live a few more years. I see you're married, don't have any children. You just can't take that stress. And my father said, well, doctor, we have a little girl and my wife is expecting again. And the doctor said, okay, well, no more children. My parents had 10. And then he said, now the government's going to give you a pension. You'll not be able to work, hold down a full-time job. You just need to do everything you can to avoid any stress in your life. So he became a general contractor, which is a lot of stress. But the real punchline of the story is that my father lived to be 93 and used to say that doctor died a long time before I did. Anyway, he started this construction company. It was small. When I was a little boy, I would ride around with him in his pickup truck Saturdays, and sometimes he'd pick me up after school. I just loved being out there on the project side. I started working when I was 14. And just knew that this is what I wanted to do with my life. I liked building, and so as I say, in '72 I I graduated and joined Dad full time. And we grew and had little projects, and nothing like this. Nothing like even the Levitt building, but more like the job that's happening over in the old business building was what Layton Construction did. But we took on bigger contracts and bigger contracts, and in 1970, but Dad had 3 axioms that were the foundation of his philosophy for business. You could write them down if you want. Our word is our bond. Now that's a well-known phrase, and what it really means is that you can count on my words as if I gave you a bond to certify that they would that we would be sure to do what we said. The second one is, I'm going to be the best pay in the business. Well, typically contractors are pretty slow paying their bills. Unfortunately, a lot of people that contractors work for are slow in paying their bills. And Dad used to say, I'm not going to earn my money twice. And if they're not going to pay, we're not going to work for them. But I heard subcontractors tell me as I was new in the business, he says, we'll do any work, we'll bid your dad's work, we want to work for you guys because we know we'll get paid. And that was an important principle that I began with. The third one is safety is no accident. Now my little sister actually came up with that statement one day, but we had some banners made, and because safety was important, has always been very, very important at Layton Construction. We didn't do much about it other than have some signs and a slogan, because I learned later that there were far better practices on how to ensure safety in construction that don't just happen by themselves. By the late 70s, I'd been in the business with my dad 6-7 years. He was on a steering committee planning a conference down in Houston of it was a construction conference, basically about unions and non-union construction practices, and he wanted me to go. He wanted me to hear the gospel about his philosophy of employment, but he wanted me to go on the conference. But as we got down there, I mean, we went a day early because he and his colleagues were going to put the final touches on the conference the day before, and so I had a free day. And there's a construction company in Houston called the Lindbeck Construction Company. Leo Lindbeck was the president of it. He was very, very highly respected in the National Association of General Contractors, and a man that had been a good friend of my father's. And so Dad sent me out to the Lindbeck Company for the day. And they were, at the time, a far larger construction operation than Layton Construction was. Today, Layton, well, before I retired, we were 3 times as big as Lindbeck. But it was a great school for me, and I spent the day with Lindbeck. I spent the day with the Vice President of Human Resources, and I asked him, what do you do? What is human resources? Never heard anything about that before. And he told me what he did, and I still really didn't understand it very well. But the thing that I was impressed with was the spirit of the employees that I met with. And I went around, I went to a big construction site and talked to a lot of people, and there was such a loyalty and a dedication to this company. And again, I'd only worked for my dad. I didn't know why people were loyal to their employers. And so I asked this man, what is it about this company that makes people want to work for them? And work is a verb. It's not a noun. It's a verb. And they were working hard for Mr. Lindbeck. He said, oh, that's an easy question. He said, Mr. Lindbeck is such a good man. This is a great company. We're just privileged to be a part of it. That was a whole new idea to me. I'd never, ever even understood about employee loyalty. But I remember I called my wife that night from the hotel, which I always do, and I'll call her tonight. And said, and I could see by then that my dad was going to step aside and this was going to come onto my shoulders. And I says, I guess if I'm a good person, people will want to work for me. And so the character of the leader is so critical in creating loyalty and motivating work to people to, not just show up and get a check, but to really work. As I say, work is a verb. You understand that. Okay. But from that, I began to develop some mentors in the industry. Mentors had been an important part of my life, even from the days of being a Boy Scout. My first mentor was my Scoutmaster. And what I know now about scouting itself is that one of the methods of teaching boys character, citizenship, and fitness is adult role models, using men that are not dad or mom. And it comes at a time in life when young people are interested in meeting other people. And so I had a great mentor as a Scoutmaster. I had some coaches. I had some really good coaches. I had some really bad coaches. But I had some good coaches. But back to my story. So one day, not long after that trip to Houston, my father came to work and walked in my office and said, "Alan, you're now the president of the company." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "I'm still the boss." I said, "Okay, good." I didn't know what a president did. I'd never worked for anybody except my dad, and he wasn't president, he was dad. But he was retiring faster than I had anticipated it. And within a couple of years, I knew that he was really pulling back and was not going to be there to the buck stopped somewhere. And I realized that the buck was going to be, that stop was me, not him. And there was a lot of concern about that, and I carried that for quite a number of years. Anyway, Dad left. I didn't really see it happening, but as I look back on it, we had just finished building the Jordan River Temple up in South Jordan in Salt Lake. And it was the only project of that kind that our company had ever built. And my father was in his 60s, and emotionally he was done. What else is there? A grocery store after a temple? He was done. He retired. I really understood it in 2003 when the Nauvoo Temple was finished, because I was done. All I had was lawsuits to settle after that. There just wasn't anything really left for me. I just didn't have any of that drive and ambition anymore. My brother did, thank goodness, and boy, get out of the way, I'm coming on, and he did. Okay. 80s, I mentioned the economy was tough, and it wasn't. It wasn't a single recession. I'm going to say there were two. There was one that started about 81, and there was another one that happened in 87 after a tax law change that basically killed all resort and development. So the 80s were tough, but we grew. And as I told my son-in-law this morning, I said, I used to tell our people, no, there's not as much work. There's not going to be as much work, but there is work. And I figured out in about 1986 that there was only one project that I knew that was in the pipeline coming out ready for building. There's only one major project for a year, and it was the Primary Children's Hospital. I thought, we don't get that, we don't have anything. And we were creative and took some risks and won that contract and had that work. And again, it was recognizing opportunity and dealing with it. We did some work up in the Park City, Deer Valley area at the time. It's when I really started to delegate project responsibility to people. And we had an issue up in Park City where something came up and there was a threat of litigation, and a letter was sent to our company, and it went to the project manager of that construction contract because it was his job. He got this letter and it's a threat of a lawsuit. And you know what he did with it? He put it in the bottom drawer of his desk, and he never told anybody about it. And one day he said, you know, they're not very happy up there. I said, we did them a great job. And I wasn't smart enough to follow through. The next thing I know is when I get a subpoena to go to court. Well, the lesson I learned in that is that as the business grew, I personally couldn't know everything that was happening in our business. I couldn't read every letter. I couldn't go to every job. I couldn't hire every new employee. We needed a standard of performance. And so along with our CFO, we developed a statement. Oh, I also had an experience. This is back in the late 80s when Stephen Covey and other people were talking about mission statements. Mission statement. You hear about that today? And the mission statements. And we had a mission statement. And I was listening to a speaker one day, and I'd brought a couple of the vice presidents, and the speaker said, how many of you have a mission statement? And my hand was the first one up, and he said, did you bring any of your colleagues? Yes, he said to my guys, stand up. This is in front of my friends, my social group, their employees. And he said, what is your company mission statement? And they couldn't say it. They didn't know what it was. I said, come on, guys, we've talked about this a lot. And they said, and then the speaker turned to me and he said, burn it. If it's more than 3 or 4 words, they don't know it and they won't remember it. I mean, Nike's got one. What's Nike's mission statement? Just do it. I mean, you remember it, don't you? Anyway, so we came up with the 3-word mission statement. It's called Constructing with Integrity. It's still today, 25 years later, it's still on every letterhead, on every sign, on every check, on every vehicle, on every billboard, semi-van. But it has a very specific meaning that the employees are indoctrinated with when they come to work and it's renewed. It means 3 things. It means 1, the quality of what we build. I mean, does this building have integrity? The welds were there, the concrete had the cement in it, the rebar is in the concrete, the doors don't jam, it's first-class work. That's constructing a building with integrity. The second meaning had to do with every other person with which we did business. From our most important owners and clients, the university, the business department, right down to the smallest subcontractor or city building official or inspector that we'd ever do business with, everybody deserves to be treated truthfully, with respect and dignity. That's part of constructing with integrity. And the third one is our internal unity as an entity. We didn't want any silos or politics within our company. And that's one of the hardest ones to do. But I think that even today, with a company spread from Honolulu to Orlando, Layton Construction still has a very strong, cohesive unity among the employees. Okay, I have some guiding maxims for you. This might be take home. Okay, number 1. A fair profit enables the employer to pay his people well and invest in the future of the business. I think I mentioned earlier, there are people out there who don't want to pay a fair price. And I want them to work for our competitors. We're not going to work for people that aren't going to pay, that don't value what we offer and pay a fair profit. Then we can pay our people well, we can provide them with appropriate benefits and the security for their employment. And so The second one is let your own character be so clear that your reputation will precede you. It will open a lot of doors. Some years ago, we had a payroll clerk, bless her heart, a sweet young woman who was a single mother and in a lot of emotional turmoil and struggling, and she made some mistakes in her job in that, do you know what a garnishment is? It's when the court comes to an employer and says, your employee's not meeting their obligations, and so we want you to send us the money, and we will see that it goes to who it deserves. And you generally experience it with when someone in a divorce where somebody's not making their child support or alimony payments, and the courts and our government is pretty tough on deadbeat dads or deadbeat moms who aren't meeting their obligations. And so we had a couple of employees at the time that we had garnishments on, and this payroll clerk was supposed to send that money into the court like the day the check was written. And she didn't do it. She didn't do it because, like I say, her life was its own turmoil. Well, one day I got a call from one of the TV stations in Salt Lake, and they said, we want to come down and interview you. Oh, what about? About not paying your garnishments. What? I don't know what you're talking about. Well, we want to come and see you. I said, we won't be available. And so the reporter came down, stood in front of our office, and was interviewed on camera about Layton Construction is deadbeat. They're not sending the garnishments in to these poor, victimized people who deserve this money. Oh, I was so upset. I was so upset. And I went home and I talked to my wife. She says, it'll blow over. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I said to her, well, I says, I know it's the station whose ratings are so low nobody watches, but gosh, it was such an unfair representation of what's happened. The poor clerk was just devastated with this experience. But in the end, nobody ever asked me about it in my circle of friends or in the business or nobody ever brought it up. So maybe nobody did see the story. Or if they did, they didn't believe it. But whatever, I mean, I'm just saying, let your character stand independent of gossip and small talk, which unfortunately is too often negative. So that's the next thing I want to talk to you about. This isn't original with me, but it is so important. Be a voice, not an echo. What does that mean? Well, all you have to do is think about what's going on in our media world today politically and listen to the echoes that are bantered about that are most often quite skewed in the way they present the information. Be a voice means speak up for what you know to be true. Don't be afraid to take a stand. But it should be your own voice and not just passing on some juicy tidbit that you heard or you read or somebody tweeted, or whatever, in your life. But think about that one. My last one is the future will always be bright for anyone who believes in themselves. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make a lot of money. And believe me, there's no lasting fulfillment in that. Don't believe the praise, as I talked about earlier, but believe the inner voice and trust your heart. Be a good person. People will want to work with you and want to work for you. Being an entrepreneur is not the ultimate end. And unfortunately, there have been people who have felt like that was the only way to be happy. And they would really be happiest working in an organization or in a situation where they had security, they were comfortable in the expectation. So being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. And so I'm a little bit uncomfortable when I see this broadcast as the Holy Grail. It worked out for me. I hope it works out for you, but that may not be the best place for you in your life. A steady paycheck, a secure job, working with other good people, for many people, is their best career. Let's see. As you mature, you will find the metrics that you really want to measure yourself by. Now, I know the most important metric that you have as you graduate and go out into the workforce is how much money you're paid. And you will judge yourself against your peers, against your friends, your other graduates, as to who goes to work where and how much you make. Well, as you mature, the metrics will change. And I encourage you to seek for the metrics with deeper roots and greater meaning. So I guess that's enough. Best wishes. Take a risk. Pick yourself up when it doesn't work. Pick yourself up again. Working in a little headwind is good. It's better than a tailwind. Because if it's a tailwind, you might start to think that you're really more than you are. So headwinds are good. My brother was complaining about the economy. We were in New York on our mission, and he's struggling through this economy, and what do we do? And I just said, David, I went through 3 recessions. Nothing like this. Well, they were, but they weren't to him. But he weathered the recessions very, very well. And as I say, the company has grown tremendously. Well, that's enough. I wanted to leave some time for questions, and looks like I didn't leave enough. But any questions? Okay, please.
Thank you for your time, by the way. What is Layton Construction's unique selling point? Because according to ENR magazine, Layton Construction is growing faster than competitors.
The question is, what is distinctive about Layton Construction, and why are they growing faster than their competitors? Man, that's a PhD dissertation. But I will tell you one thing. Back in the 90s, my brother and I realized that these people we had working for us might even be it might increase the motivation if we gave them a piece of the company. And we began to sell stock to our key employees. And today, Layton Construction is owned by 124 people who live across the country. Our second largest operation besides Utah is in Nashville. How does that connect to here? Well, you talked about the things we build. You missed hospitals. Layton is the 5th largest healthcare contractor in the country, building hospitals all over, from Ketchikan, Alaska to Birmingham, Alabama, all over the country. We built the largest, we built a hospital for the University of Texas in San Antonio that's 1 million square feet. Largest university hospital, standalone building they tell me in the country. Now it's been done 5 years. There's probably a bigger one somewhere else anyway, so don't brag on that. So that's a good question. You had a question.
Yeah, I'm wondering, what do you think is a good solution to encouraging people to go into the trades? Because without the people doing the work, we don't have...
Man, that's such a great... Our question is, how do we encourage people to come into the trades? Well, I think the most effective way to encourage people to come into the trades is to provide them with a life and a career where they are given opportunity and security and a good livable income. One day I was having lunch with the head of the AFL-CIO. Do you know what that is? Anybody not know what that is? That's the union. AFL-CIO, for the state of Utah. And Ed Main, he was a good man, really a good man. And he said to me, Alan, he said, don't worry about us. If everybody treated their employees like Layton Construction, he said, I'd have to retire or go get a job. But there are plenty who don't, and I've got plenty to do. So that's the way you recruit people to the trades, is to give them a good life, a good livable income, and opportunity. Opportunity. And I see where some of the carpenters that I hired are today building huge projects as they grow in the business. Okay, any more questions? I do want to say, I brought something for you today. I do a lot of reading. I learned when I was in school at BYU, I learned that if you only read what you're assigned, you're going to leave college with a less of an education than if you began to do your own outside reading. I read a lot of books even today. And I bought these books and I've used them. There's some marks in them, but I'm not going to use them anymore, and I'd like to give them away today. Okay? So who gets the books? My birthday is June 3rd. Anybody have a June 3rd?
No, but mine's in like 3 days.
Oh, okay. You?
June 3rd.
June 3rd? You know, there aren't many of us. There you go. Okay. June 1st. That's close. Close. In the construction business, being second is nothing. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Does anybody have a birthday today? The 11th of September. Okay, come on up. These are Harvard Business Review's 10 must-reads. The Harvard Business Review is a wonderful publication that comes out quarterly, and these are some of their best reads.
Thank you.
Good luck. Please read these books. Okay, one more. How should I pick this one up? Think of something there? Okay, yes.
I know the author.
You know the author, Simon Sinek?
Yes.
Do you? How do you know Simon?
I watch his videos.
Will you read his book? Okay. Thank you very much.
Let me jump in really quick. And just say one thing. There's a difference between teaching, advice, and wisdom, and what you've heard today was wisdom. I want to present Alan Layton with the Thunderbird Award in recognition of his time that he took to come down here and talk to us today. So
Thank you very much.